Do you think at some point next year, could we get into true deflation? I mean, could the economy slow so much that we actually start seeing negative CPI prints?
Well, recession is the traditional solution to get rid of inflation. Absolutely. I mean, that this is what maybe Powell should have said from the very beginning.
Right.
And
maybe what he wished he could have said. Yeah.
Maybe you wish you could have said it. This was the solution in the 70s and 80s and 82. Yeah, you get the recession, it crushes demand, and therefore inflation goes away. That is the ultimate destination. Even Germany's in the 20s, that every inflation spike ultimately ends. The question is how much damage comes with it in between. And if recession is the solution and the honest answer, then folks, all these 23 earnings projections are still way too optimistic.
Right.
That's why markets bottom inside the recession while the Fed is rate cutting, and it's towards the tail end of the recession, maybe anticipating 6 months or so in advance of a recession end, that markets traditionally bottom, because then you're out of that complete conversion cycle. I mean, if you look at earnings numbers this year, they're still sky high. I mean, it's actually incredible, right? I mean, obviously on the tailwinds of all the liquidity injections, free money and spending, gap earnings went to new record highs. And in the first half of the year, companies were actually largely able to pass the price increases to consumers.
Right. Profit margins are still near record highs, right?
They're doing great. And so you look at this on a historical basis and say, well, how long is that sustainable? Right? I mean, are we now in a new era where you can maintain these type of earnings, considering that the consumer has just experienced negative real wage growth for a year and a half, considering that the consumer is piling into credit card debt because they can't pay their monthly bills, considering that the cost of all the debt they carry is increasing. I mean, just look at the mortgage payments. Now, if you're on a fixed mortgage, I suppose you're fine. If you got a variable, you're crying in your pillow. It's a really tricky game here. And now what we also seen, and this is probably the concern about structural inflation for the Fed, because the labor market has been tight, we've seen increases in wages. That's the wage inflation component. It's funny, the Fed didn't really get serious about inflation until wages started rising.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as there's some good news for you, now we intervene.
Yeah, I don't know if you know Michael Every from Rabobank, but I got to give him credit because he said, I don't know, the beginning of this year, he said that's when you'll see the Fed act, when you start seeing central banks act, when you start seeing the wages go up. So
that's right. So finally there's some good news for the consumer. Now let's crush them.
Now let's crush it. Yeah.
Yeah. You can pay whatever whatever comes your way on the consumer side, overpay everything, but we'll keep it going. Now, this is the historical frustration with the Fed, because as much as I may applaud Jay Powell finally for having spoken plainly on Friday at Jackson Hole, there's been zero accountability for what they've done. Bullard, I give him credit for actually last week pointing out, yeah, we've overdone it on the printing side. Mm-hmm. He literally said that we've overdone it. We've overshot on the balance sheet. What are the consequences?
Sorry for laughing, but yeah, just after a 10x increase in like 14 years or something like that.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, genius. We could have probably told you that maybe 10 years ago.
No, I mean, I think, look, I've been a long-term critic of this whole free money system because it's resulted in historic divisions in society, wealth inequality, the largest we've seen ever. It's left people out. And I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing so much division in politics. I think there's a lot of people simply frustrated, and then they're easy to polarize on the political front. Housing, you look at the younger generation, they're completely priced out. Housing affordability is the lowest, even below 2007. They've created this monster, and they've done it by too much printing and too loose policy for too long. When there was fiscal record stimulus going through the system, they should have stepped back. They said, okay, enough. Yeah, but they didn't. and there's been no accountability since then. And so now we're, first we made the rich richer, then we hurt the poor with inflation, and now let's crush them with the cost of carry. I don't know how that's a long-term viable solution for a healthy economy and society. But hey, I like surprises.
Yeah, well, it's not, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So I'm just going to read the quote that you just paraphrased there, but you said this on Twitter the other day. First, we made the rich insanely rich, then we let inflation run wild, and now paying for the most vulnerable, right? So you and I have been long-term critics of the Fed and the central banks, I think largely for this reason at the core, right? It's the deformations of the cost of money and the price of assets, which are, no surprise, largely owned by the already rich, right? And so the rich's advantage has just continued to grow. And part of the reason for no accountability, I got to think, Sven, is because the people who run the system are the people who are benefiting most, right? So why are they going to challenge something that is just continuing to, improve their advantage across the system? And this history shows the only time they really care is when the public gets to a point where it says no more and the pitchforks and torches come out, and then at that point it's usually too late, and those transitions tend to be very painful for everybody. So it's really not something for us all to wish for. If you enjoyed this video clip, click here to watch another one you should like.